Hello. We are doing our post-game report here for the Seminoles after the Cheez-it Bowl. Another drama-filled win for the Seminoles, which surpriser. That has been happening a lot this season. Just going to be a quick kind of 20-minute post-game report here. I want to talk a little bit about the offense, the defense tonight, what we saw from them, what we can expect for next year in 2023 from this Seminoles team, and also kind of just, what the major takeaways of this game are. Obviously, Jordan Travis has a huge game. Johnny Wilson has a huge game. That was amazing what they were doing by the end of that game, where Jordan was just throwing the ball downfield. Johnny Wilson just saying, "Go get the ball." Just giving him these contested catches over and over and over. And while Johnny did have that one open drop in that drive on the fourth quarter that eventually did lead to a touchdown, he had just big play after big play after big play with contested catches on almost every single one of them. So we'll get fully into that, as well as, Jammie Robinson. It looks like this is his last game as a Seminole. Right now, there's kind of no word out yet on players like Jared Verse or Fabian Lovett, but Jammie Robinson was tweeting before this game, kind of a few pictures from this past year and from his time at FSU, and said last one in that post. As well, I know the sideline reporter for ESPN said that this is likely his last game. That kind of lines up with everything we've been seeing this season. He already accepted his Senior Bowl invite for the draft, and he really could have gone last season to the NFL. So, just the fact that the Seminoles were able to get another year out of Jammie Robinson is just a huge win. And tonight, while Jordan and Johnny had the really big numbers, gosh, I think Jammie Robinson might have been the best player on the field for the Seminoles. He was just all over Oklahoma, even after he got injured at one point, had to leave the game, and then came back in. But I know this defense wasn't perfect tonight. There are some things that they really need to clean up, especially in that defensive backfield, at corner, I think especially. But if you look at what they were able to do with Jammie Robinson tonight, and I think he was the best player on the field, even though Jordan was exceptional. But I just kind of want to first get into some takeaways from this game. What are we going to think about this 10th win for the Seminoles, about finishing off the season this way for Mike Norvell? And really, I think my biggest takeaway from this is, maybe my biggest takeaways are a few big things. For one, we know this team has always fought for each other. Mike Norvell makes it all about culture. But think about that moment we saw at the end of the game with Jazz Turnsign, who went down, had a really serious injury. Fingers crossed for him. Hopefully, he's going to be okay and it's not too serious. But on field, things did not look well, looked pretty grim. And you saw how those Seminoles players responded. They loved their teammate. They went out and made sure that he knew, that they were going to fight for him. And, I think it's just the little things like that if you look at throughout this year, getting to go to practice a little bit. I know I saw it, but, when the bullets start flying, sometimes things don't exactly go the way you think they will. But with the Seminoles team, it's just so different for them. They clearly have this great love and appreciation for each other. And it's just infectious. So I think that's one takeaway that, after watching this game, the biggest thing I'm thinking about is, Mike Norvell has really changed the culture of the Seminoles. And I know sometimes this culture is this word that's thrown around in sports that, sometimes people will think it means nothing. Sometimes people thinks it means everything. I'm a little somewhere in the middle. I think the main point about Norvell turning around this culture is that, we saw what this team looked like before Mike Norvell got here. They didn't fight for each other. They didn't, it wasn't this team effort that we see with the Seminoles now, where everything is a full team effort and everything is about the team, not just one individual player. It's not just about Jordan Travis or Jammie Robinson or Jared Verse. It's about every single player on that field. And especially in that moment that you saw with Jazz Turnsign, those are the kind of moments that, give you a lot of context of how this team really feels about each other, just how much they care about that guy next to them. So, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. But as well, this offense continues to move the ball well, but they struggle in some of these third down, fourth down, red zone situations that, you would just like them to be better in. And I think, for a team that does struggle in that area, they have the biggest counter for that, which is explosive plays, right? I mean, we saw it so many times in this game. Johnny Wilson, multiple times. Trey Benson had a big 33-yard catch. Trayshawn Ward had that touchdown run that was 30-plus yards. So, if you're not going to be one of the better teams, or if your weakness as an offense is going to be converting those third downs, converting fourth downs, and converting red zone opportunities, if that's your Achilles heel, then the best cure for that is going to be getting those explosive plays all the time, because you saw on that last offensive drive that the Seminoles had, they completely flipped the field with that throw to Johnny Wilson, to where they could just take out the rest of the clock, really force Oklahoma to take their last timeout, put them in a bad position to where they had about a minute left, no timeouts. Seminoles were up 3, and all the pressure was on Oklahoma. So, while you would like the Seminoles team to be better at these third down conversion, red zone conversion situations, at the same time, you kind of just got to put your hands up sometimes and say, you know what, if you can go ahead and get 30-yard plays all the time, then you're still going to have a really successful offense. And this is one of the top offenses in college football, but I think my main criticism all year, and kind of my main concern, has always been that, with those third down, fourth down, red zone opportunities, they can catch up to you. And we saw that happen a few times. And I think that was part of the reason why, the Seminoles kept a lot of the teams in close games where, they probably should have won by at least 2 scores, if not 3 scores. So I think when you watch the Seminoles offense, there's a lot to be excited about. Just what Jordan Travis can do as a quarterback, him being the engine of this offense, and not just as a rusher and using his legs as the rushing element to this offense, but using his mobility, his pocket awareness, his just innate skill to feel out the pocket. That is the most elite trait that Jordan Travis has. And while his athleticism is off the charts, that pocket feel, that awareness, the fact that he is always aware of the pressure around him and is able to escape it and make the most out of plays. That's the biggest jump we saw from Jordan from last season to this season. And in terms of his development, that's the one thing this year that you're going to look back on and say that was different about Jordan Travis. He always had that ability to escape pressure in the exact right moments, at the exact right time, and make plays when he needed to. Hats off to Jordan Travis. He had an excellent year, and this type of game was the exact game that was representative of what we've seen from him. Maybe his receivers aren't helping him out the most. Maybe there's a few drops here and there, but he's going to keep believing in them. He's going to keep empowering the players around them, making them better, and then just making plays on the football field. So I do want to do some grades for this offense. I think if you look at the quarterback position, you have to give Jordan Travis an A+. Just an excellent game from him. And he did have that interception. But if you look at that situation, it was fourth down. The Seminoles, if they hadn't converted there, they were going to turn it over. So if you're ever going to throw an interception, that's the time to throw an interception. And, if that play had been incomplete, Oklahoma actually would have gotten the ball further upfield. So in the general scheme of things, of course, you don't love to have an interception on your resume and on your stat sheet, but with the context of the situation, that's not a bad interception to have. There's a lot worse interceptions. So with Jordan this year, I just kind of want to reflect back on the fact that, like I said earlier, his ability to escape pressure was the biggest jump that we saw. And, we've always seen Jordan be a good downfield passer and someone who took shots all the time, gave his receivers those opportunities to make plays downfield. And Johnny Wilson is a perfect guy for that, like you can see. But this year especially, we saw Jordan develop into a much more mature passer, a much more patient passer. And even though he's getting the ball out a lot quicker, he clearly just his understanding of the playbook and what's going on the football field has improved so much this season. And he's really gone from just making plays on the field to controlling the game. And, when I think you look back at this year and when we see what he's going to be doing next year, what's really changed about him from 2021 to now is just that calmness under pressure. The fact that he's always going to be making the right play in those situations. He's always going to give his team an opportunity to win. So I think when you think about Jordan this season, especially, he was just such a great football player, but also just such a great quarterback as well. Because we have seen him be a good football player in the past. We've seen him make plays. We've seen him, have those Houdini-like runs where you're like, how is he going to get out of this? And he magically does, just like he did against Florida about a month ago. But this season, he has taken care of the football. He has put his players in positions to win. He has made the players around him better, and he's really just made the most of his mobility in terms of evading pressure, avoiding pressure, and not having negative plays. That is the difference, Jordan Travis, this season. So let's move on to the rest of this room, though, or the rest of the offense. In terms of the offensive line, I'm going to give them – I'm leaning between a C+ and a B- for the season, but I'll go with a B- because I think we saw dramatic improvement, and they were really great up front in the run game especially. I think the reason, that I've been a little just critical of this offensive line is because I think they just can be better. If you look at that game against Florida, game against Clemson, and a few others, this Seminoles team would just get beat up front too often. It's one thing to get beat sometimes, but especially against the Gators, the reason Florida was able to stay in that game was because they control the line of scrimmage. So, it's one thing for the Seminoles to have this massive improvement in the offensive line like they did this season, to play good, really competent football, really complimentary football up front along the offensive line. But what the next step is going to be, and hopefully what they progress to next season, is going to be really owning and controlling the line of scrimmage. Because if they can do that, they can dictate games against any opponent since they have Jordan Travis behind them. So, I think the offensive line for me has been the weak point of this offense. But, you look at the guys they're bringing in, the players they're bringing in, they have about 12 years of experience between the three starters that they're potentially going to be bringing in next season through the transfer portal. So, let's see if they add more. Let's see who they go after. Let's see who stays. But I think for now, you can look at this offensive line as a positive, but also understanding that, there is still that room for growth. But I don't want to spend too much time on the offensive line. I want to talk about these skill position players. And for me, it's going to be a B+ because, I think if you look at this running back room that the Seminoles have assembled, if I was just grading running backs, I'd give them an A because, Trayshawn Ward played excellent football early on. He gets hurt. Trey Benson comes in and he just went off for 5 straight games, playing some of the best football that he's ever played in his life. I remember I asked him after the Miami game if he felt like this is the best football he's ever played, and he just said, yeah, this is just the best I've ever played in my life. So if you look at what they've been able to do with this running back room, it's really impressive that they've not only made the most out of all of these guys, but the fact that they're keeping all these guys together. We'll see if there's any transfers or potential transfers from that room. We know Trey Benson's going to be sticking around for sure next season. So I think no matter what, that room is going to be in a really good spot next year. So, we'll see how that all shakes out. But those running backs have been excellent. With me, you look at those tight ends and the wide receivers, and that's kind of the thing that people will look at this year and say was a little disappointing. I think they just haven't been good enough this season, especially with the drops. I think the drops is the main issue, to where you look at and you say, you know what? Yeah, maybe some routes could have been run better. Maybe there are some small things you can clean up, but there were multiple times against teams like Wake, like against Florida, like tonight, where Florida State, they had opportunities to run away with this game and really put up some serious points. and they just had drop balls. So the drops have to be the biggest thing that you look at next year. And if you're the offensive staff for this team, and you just have to figure out how to fix that. So, I like a lot of these receivers, but, even a guy like Johnny Wilson, who had a great night tonight, still had that major drop pass that easily could have been a touchdown. And while they still scored that drive, it's those little things like that they really need to clean up going into next season. So it'd be great if they could do that. That would really elevate this offense to the next level, because I think, Jordan Travis, he's only going to be getting better and better. We saw him get better year to year, and that's going to happen again this offseason. But even this year, he played some of the best football of any quarterback in all of college football. So if they can find a way to get more consistency from this receiving room and be able to depend on them more, this offense is going to be a top 3, top 5 offense in the country. And honestly, I think no matter what, they should be, even if, this receiver room is improved slightly. But I really like this receiving room. I want them to be doing better. They need to be doing better. But, they'll be getting a few guys next year, like those 2 tight ends they're going to be getting through the transfer portal. Those are going to be huge gets for them, as well as Winston Wright, hopefully who will be playing next season. Obviously we don't know about his status, but everything is looking like he'll be, ready for next year. I know it was potentially trending toward him even being back this season, but they'll be adding Winston Wright. They'll be adding 5-star Hakeem Williams. So I think, overall, this receiving room will be better. Even, some of the guys who they're going to be bringing back next year, like Johnny Wilson, potentially Kentron Portier, Malik McClain. I just think there's like 5, 6, 7, 8 names that you all look at them. And if they all improve next season and they bring all those guys back next year, they're going to make – they're just going to score a lot of points. And this is going to be a ridiculous offense. But let's get over to the other side of the ball, where I know there might be, some more concerns. Obviously not the best performance from the defense tonight, especially on that drive that Oklahoma had to score the game in 32. It's kind of what's been happening all year with this defense. At times they have they make good plays. They had that fumble in, I believe, the 3rd or 4th quarter that really, really pushed the offense and kind of helped them close out this game. But then also, like I said, you look at that last drive that the defense had before the final drive. So the drive to tie the game up 32, Oklahoma just had multiple 20, 30-yard plays the last 5 minutes of this game. And that's just unacceptable from the Seminoles. So the defense has to be better next year. I think that's the one thing that you look at with this team. And, they do some things well on defense. In some games, the defensive line plays well. They get some sacks. You see Jamie Robinson flying all over the field. The linebackers have improved, but it's still not where it needs to be. So if I'm grading out this defense along the defensive line, I'll give them a solid B+, just because, I think they played really, really well this season. But also, dealing with injuries with Fabian Lovett was missing a lot of time. Robert Cooper missed some time. Jared Verse was kind of hurt for a lot of the year. They made a lot out of the young guys who came in. Derek McClendon, I thought, had a really good season. Pat Payton, obviously, Defensive Rookie of the Year in the ACC. So they do have a bright future in that room, and we'll see if they try and hit the portal at all, or what's going to be happening with Jared Verse. Obviously, he's going to be the biggest domino for that defensive line. They did a lot with a very injured defensive line. I think it could have been better, but I think a B+ is a very fair grade for them. So let's move along to the linebackers, where I'm going to go with an A-, because I think if you look at the expectations of this linebacker room, where they were in the last 2 seasons prior, it was just a huge improvement for this linebacker room. They weren't the best in run fits. They weren't necessarily the best in coverage, but overall they weren't the reason that the Seminoles would lose games or have these huge explosive plays from the other team. So I think if you look at this defense, linebackers are one of the strengths of this defense. And I think, they performed just really, really well this season, coming from where they had been in the past. So I really like the direction of that room. I want to see the continued development of those players. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I think, defensive line, linebackers, they did a good job. In the defensive backfield, I'm going to give them a B- because I think Jammie Robinson was an awesome player. But you look at the rest of this defensive backfield, and they just struggled. I mean, the corners struggled. They really spent the entire season trying to figure out, who they trusted in that cornerback room. And some guys had some good games, I know Jerry Jones played really well towards the end of the season there. But, I mean, overall, that has to be the biggest concern for the Seminoles. If they can land the Virginia corner via the transfer portal, that would be huge for them. But for now, the biggest concern has to be this defensive backfield, how they're going to replace Jammie Robinson, who they're going to get in the portal at the cornerback position and at safety. Because I think Akeem Dent and Shaheem Brown played really good football. But also, Akeem Dent had been hurt a lot this year. And we don't know what those guys' futures look like. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I do want to move on. Just kind of my last point here, and then we'll end the stream. What does 2023 look like for the Seminoles? I think 2023, obviously there's still some things to play out with the transfer portal, who's staying, who's leaving, who's going to the NFL draft. It looks like Jammie Robinson is gone, but we still don't know about Jared Verse, Fabian Lovett. There's still quite a few guys who we're still waiting to hear about, but this should be an 11-win football team at minimum next year and competing for the ACC. With the format changing for the ACC championship, where it's not just going to be divisional and to where the Seminoles can finish behind Clemson and still compete in that ACC championship game. I think that's going to be huge for them. And I'm not sure if the Seminoles will be the number one team in the ACC at the end of the regular season, but I think one way or another, even if it has to go down to the ACC championship, they're going to be a top 10 team in college football and potentially a top 5 team. I think Jordan Travis is excellent. Obviously, you could be losing some pieces on defense, but I mean, Jordan Travis played at a near Heisman level this season, if not Heisman level, and I think he's only going to be better next year. So a lot to look forward to from the offensive side of the ball. This should be, one of the top 3 to 5 offenses in all the country. So, when you're looking at the rest of this team, you're really just looking at, okay, how can this defense support this juggernaut offense? If they can land the Virginia cornerback, Cypress, in the transfer portal, if they can fill some of those other holes and get better depth along, the defensive line, along the defensive back field, I think this team should be in a really, really good place. So my early prediction for now, and I'm sure we'll revisit this and make more predictions as we get more information, as we see more of what this 2023 squad will look like. I'm projecting 11 wins and a near miss in the college football playoff. I think they're going to end up as one of those teams that's 5, 6, or 7, maybe not just quite there. I think they could beat LSU and they could beat Clemson next year, but I just, right now as the team is currently built with some of the moving pieces that they could be losing, like Jared Verse, I'm just not quite so confident right now to say that this is going to be a college football playoff team. So we'll see how the offseason plays out. We'll see how everything goes, but you should go to Tomahawk Nation for everything FSU related. That's going to be FSU football, basketball, everything else. But we'll be doing a lot of football coverage going into this 2023 season. I think it's going to be really exciting. Obviously, 10 wins. Mike Norvell really putting his stamp on Seminoles football. It's just been huge for this team. So, next year we'll see, where this team is at. In fact, their next game back is going to be in Orlando at this same exact spot of the Cheez-it Bowl, playing the LSU Tigers. So that should be a very exciting game, a good litmus test for where this team is. But for now, that's me signing off. It's the off season officially for the Seminoles. Let's see how Mike Norvell builds this 2023 team. I have high expectations. You should too, Seminole fans. But yeah, go ahead over to Tomahawk Nation and check out all the football content we'll be putting out there. I'm sure we'll have a ton to talk about. So until the next time, I'll see you then.